You're locked in to the hottest station on the planet.
Resistance is futile. The revolution has begun.
You're listening to Rebelpreneur Radio, helping you break the rules and build the business you need for the life you want. And now, broadcasting his pirate signal
from somewhere beyond the status quo,
here's your host, best-selling author, marketing and media strategist, Ralph Brogdon.
Hello and welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio. It's the show that helps you build the business you need so you can live the life you want. I'm Ralph Brogdon. Whatever stage of business growth and development you are at right now, if it's in the startup, the scale-up, or the sell-out stage, corporate culture is so important because, number one, you can't do everything yourself. And secondly, if you're going to work with people and have an effective organization, you've really got to pay attention to your culture. It's easy to think about, but where can we get a practical framework to help you to cultivate buy-in from your people, to increase engagement, maintain perpetual momentum with your organizational operating system? I have the framework, and I have the man behind that framework with us today. He is going to talk about the 7 question, 7 promise framework that he says will turn your company into a momentum machine. I'm speaking today with Walt Brown. Seasoned multi-company entrepreneur is one label that has been used to describe Walt over the years. He is 7 for 7 when it comes to launching and growing new companies. During the last decade, he has helped transform the culture of more than 150 organizations across the country as an implementer of an OOS known as the Entrepreneurial Operating System. Mr. Walt Brown, welcome to Rebelpreneur Radio.
Thank you, Ralph. Appreciate you having me.
Thank you so much for your time. I'm looking forward to getting into this idea of creating a positive culture, because I think, most people, when you do the surveys of satisfaction at work, people that are not satisfied, the biggest problem is with the boss. In other words, leadership, the tonality, the atmosphere, the culture of the organization is really challenging these days. You have done some incredible work with so many different organizations to implement this 7 question, 7 promise framework and really turn things around. I want to get into that, but first, tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get started in this? What's your story?
In the world, well, I want to, as I was listening to the introduction, thank you for all those fine labels of success, but just everybody needs to remember, I've got the scarred knees and the straps across my back of being an entrepreneur for all of these years. So, with doing well also comes a lot of the pain and the scars that I share with everybody else that's probably listening that wants to have the life and, wants to run their own gig. Started out as an accounting nerd and statistics guy and worked for a Big 8 accounting firm for 4 seasons and took the IQ exam in 1986. That's how old I am. And scored low enough. Was allowed to start my own company, and it was great. That was basically 4 companies that we started and ran, and then got lucky and sold them in 2006. And people said, "What are you going to do, Walt?" And I said, "I'm not real sure." And they said, "Have you ever thought about coaching or facilitation?" And I'm like, "That's touchy-feely stuff. I'm kind of a numbers guy." And they said, "No, you'd be really good at it." And I sort of stumbled into this peer group deal where very quickly I sold the company in August of 06, and by September of 06 I had 33 clients, and I had them in like peer group rooms, and we were doing strategic thinking and some pretty fast work. And about 9 months in, we were able to get all the CEOs aligned, and their peer groups were saying, that's the right way to go, Ralph, go that way. And of these 33 clients, 9 of them invited me in to help them work their teams to do the pivot. And I didn't have any way to do it. And then maybe later on I'll tell the story of how this thing called EOS or Traction discovered me. But basically, it's an organizational operating system that I've had the pleasure of running 178 companies through over the last 12 years.
So many business owners, and I'm speaking primarily of small business owners, startup owners, they don't know what they're going to do tomorrow, much less run their organization, run their business according to an entrepreneurial operating system. To give us the Reader's Digest version of what that's all about, and how would that really benefit a business owner who's really going by the seat of his pants right now?
Yeah, and sort of the seat of a pants. One thing we definitely know is that we have this thing in our mind of this vision of the kind of organization that we want to have, right? That's not seat of the pants, but maybe as we get busy and you're trying to figure out where the next steps are, we need to be able to slow down and make sure that we're surrounding our vision and our strategy with, the right people who all buy into it. And I think sometimes we get so busy, to use like Michael Gerber of the E-Myth. He talks about spending all of our time working in the business as opposed to on the business. And we need to be able to force ourselves to be able to get out of the day-to-day and actually stop and step back and look down on the system and try to improve the system. We can't improve the system by being inside. And EOS is also known as Traction, is the book. Gino Wickman wrote it. And it's just a framework of like 6 basic components that every championship team has. If you got like this really quickly, if you got 10 companies out there competing, how many can be in the championship game? 2, right? And so when you step back and see what those 2 are doing, they've just gotten really good at building strength in 6 key components. And these are super fast. Like, what's your vision? Got to be on the same page with what your vision is and super clear. This is strategy, tactics. We got to surround that vision with the right people in the right seats. And then we have to make sure that we're all on the same page with how we're measuring success or data. And when we have super clear vision and the right people surrounding the vision and everybody agreeing on how things are measured, we create a more transparent organization. And what reigns out of that are issues. And if we can't take care of our issues and make them go away, then we're just going to keep tripping over the same stump every day. You got to have process, and then you have to have individual accountability and discipline. That's the basic framework of what I've been teaching for the last 12 years and where the 7 questions, 7 promises came from.
Very interesting. And it does provide, I think, some guidance that is really badly needed for a lot of self-directed organizations. And I guess the value would be, you tend to work in organizations that are a little bit larger than a small business, for example. It's going to be a medium-sized or a larger corporate concern. But these principles in this framework really applies to any stage of business, because at some point, if you want to grow, if you want to build the business you need so that you can live the life you want, you can't do it by yourself. And you've got to have these systems in place so that you can grow and not see everything kind of fall apart. So it's really, wherever someone is right now in the growth of their business, they really need to be paying attention to these types of issues now before they get much bigger.
Yeah, because the frustration is you get moving. This principle works with a 3-person company to 14,000 person group. So that's the range of clients that I've worked with. And it's the basic stuff. And one of the biggest frustrations we have as business owners is we'll get it moving. We'll get the plates in the air, so to speak, and then we start focusing on one plate and the other plates fall. We lose momentum, and we constantly are having to restart and rebuild the momentum. And, so that always seems to be on our backs as business owners. And what we need to try to be able to do is to create an organization that we can actually hand the mantle over to the people that are in our organization to help them enable them to turn the crank and power and keep the momentum going, Ralph. Mm-hmm. And, you even though with this great system called EOS and Traction, a lot of times the people, the individuals in the organization we're doing this with, see it as something that's being done to them as opposed to for them. Mm-hmm. And we really have to flip that script, get them to buy in. So,
yeah.
That's awesome.
Why is it such a hard time to bring this culture, to bring alignment with so many different people? What is the problem in your opinion that it seems to be so difficult to get people in alignment, in agreement? Is it the people or is it the leadership?
Well, it starts with the leader, as everything else does, right? As the leader goes, so goes the leadership team. As the leadership team goes, the rest of the organization. And I look at leadership meaning thinking, where managing is like doing. And, where the programs always fail is when the CEO or whoever, the owner, does not buy in. They have to be ready for the change, which means they got to be letting go of the vine. They normally are a little bit further down the path to realize that it's not efficient for them to try to be doing everything. It's kind of, we reach this point where, gosh, I am really, really good at doing this thing in my business. And if I could just surround myself with others who are great at doing something else that augments me and complements me, boy, my life would be really great. And they kind of have to be at that point. If they're still at this point where they're trying to make every decision and still trying to figure it out, they aren't ready.
This sounds so self-evident, but I'm personally acquainted with businesses in the multi-million-dollar year category still being led by CEOs who are still micromanaging everybody.
Yeah,
they have to be involved in every single decision. They don't trust their team, and the teams are frustrated.
And they're frustrated. And I always tell this is the story I say, we've got 60 seconds. I know you, Mr. CEO, can go to the free throw line and you could hit 10 out of 10 in 60 seconds. Well, I'm going to put 10 people, 5 is an easier number to use. I'm going to put 5 people on 5 different lines, and they're going to go for a minute, and they're going to hit 80% of their shots. Who's going to score points?
That's right.
And then it's like, once you start looking at it that way, it was like, well, how do we make sure they know that they're shooting at the right goal? How do we make sure they know what the correct rate is? How do we know we're communicating? That's when it comes into play. We're really going to build an organization. And the key too, as you start to grow, there are a couple of big inflection points as you go from the small company, 15, 14 people, where everybody has access to the CEO. And then you go to that 21, 28, 40, and there's this change where sometimes the team members that didn't get you to where you're trying to go to shouldn't really be on your leadership team. They should be maybe in a role somewhere else, and finding a super honorable way to help those folks still stay as part of your dream and your vision, but maybe not the people that you're surrounded with tomorrow to take the business into the future, is another really hard pivot point that people are trying to find. And there hasn't been any really clear way to get there, Ralph. I don't know if that makes sense or not, but.
Absolutely. Well, I want to get into this 7 question, 7 promise framework and get you to walk us through that step by step. As I prepped for our conversation, I read through this framework, and I got to say, as I applied that in retrospect to other organizations that I've been a part of that didn't work out for whatever reason, I found that if only they had this framework, things would have been very, very different for me personally. And I know for the teams that I was on and for the culture of those organizations that had been quite toxic. So I can personally say this framework that you're sharing here, 7 questions, 7 promise, it is very, very powerful. And I'm wondering if you could walk us through step by step what those 7 questions are. And I think our listeners will really immediately begin to see the value of that.
Yeah, absolutely will. Do you want me to share the millennial story of where it came from?
Absolutely. Quick? Sure.
So a couple things. First, I'll do. There's this one sort of fact, and is that an organization is a fiction that's only given meaning and power by those who buy in. And so if you imagine you've got 50 people and 24 buy into this and 26 buy into that, you've got 2 organizations. And in essence, you've already been divided on your way to being conquered. And none of us dreams about starting a company where we're divided, right? This
right.
is what everybody's here, say vision. And so going through this EOS traction deal, I must have been around client number 85 or so. I can't remember. And I was getting really fed up with hearing people complain about millennials, just the stereotype about millennials. And I was saying to myself, I don't see this. This isn't in the world I'm seeing. The folks that are surrounding the tables I'm part of are made up of millennials, and they're not only engaged and motivated, but they're ready to take over the world. So I just don't get it. and I was lucky enough to have enough of these clients, and I asked the clients for permission to engage with their millennials. And what came back was they said, through EOS, we're actually forcing the organization to describe and create what yes looks like to 7 fundamental things. And then through the system, the organization is actually able to like keep these promises or maintain an alignment to these 7 questions. And then that ended up being the 7 questions, 7 promise framework. And so these are what the 7 questions are. I'll go through them a couple of times. You can ask questions, but we want to create one single organization where everyone in there can understand what it means to belong. Like what are the values and the behaviors and the beliefs. We would like, question number 2 is, we would like for people to be able to say, yes, I believe in what the organization's about and what the strategies and priorities are. We would like for them to be able to say, yes, I understand and embrace what I'm accountable for. Yes, I understand and embrace how I'm measured. Yes, I understand and embrace how the organization listens and how my opinion is heard. I understand and embrace how I am developed. And finally, I understand and embrace what balance means at the organization. So it's belong and believe, accountable, measured, heard, developed, balanced. And if you can just imagine a place where everybody can say yes to those 7 things, you create a pretty cool culture that's kind of unstoppable and has a ton of momentum, Ralph.
You know, when you mentioned Michael Gerber, he's one of my mentors and someone that I've learned quite a bit from over the years. He talked about having a place where people would say, you work for an organization like that. I would love to be a part of that. I've always wanted to be a part of an organization like that. And that's kind of the reaction I get when I think about these 7 questions. And I think it's really interesting, your observation about millennials, because as a strategist, I'm always looking at the big picture. And I'm looking at principles that apply to humans, not just millennials, not just boomers. And I think these principles here, I think they're applicable to all people of every generation. We all want to belong. We all want to believe in something that's bigger than ourselves. We all want accountability. We need to know how we are measured so that, if I'm scoring touchdowns and you're compensating me based on field goals, then we've got a mismatch there. So we need to know how we're being measured. We got to know that our voice is important and that somebody is hearing me, that we have a need to be developed personally as well as professionally. And then balancing roles and goals and personal and professional and priorities at work. I mean, it sounds like the ideal organization.
It does. And so, but there's a lot of hard work up front where first leadership has to get on the same page with what it means to be balanced. Mm-hmm. If this is a place where we're going to work 60 hours a week, you need to gut check. And when somebody's coming to work for you, say, this is a 60-hour a week job. This is what we can pay you, and so it's super important for first leadership to get on the same page. And then, the second part of it is we call it the 7 questions, 7 promises framework, where, the company's making a promise to the company going, this is who we're going to be, and we're going to surround you with others. And we're going to constantly give you the ability to align to these 7 questions. And, if something changes in your life and you can't say yes to these things, either capital yeses or lowercase yeses, then maybe it's time for you to move on and self-select out. We don't want to hold you back from, your future. So it's an ever evolving, ever correcting framework. And, yeah, millennials are people too.
Well, and just as I go through and I check these things off, I'm not in the my kids are millennials. I guess I'm a baby or a Generation X, or I get confused about where I fit in.
I don't have generations in my mind. I just
yeah. But I think it's interesting that that all of these questions really check the boxes for the human experience, the psychological and emotional needs of fulfillment and self-actualization,
right?
To feel like you have a purpose.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to talk over you, Ralph. You're just got all fired up.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's encouraging, and I think not only does this template and this framework really, as you said, from companies of 3 people up to 14,000 people and beyond, but mission-driven organizations. If you're a nonprofit, whatever your grassroots cause is, any kind of organization, social change, educational systems, all of these different organizations, if they would really be empowered if they could actually get people to buy into this level and to honestly and authentically be able to say yes to each one of these things.
Right. Yeah. That's what we're trying to create.
So then what happens when you go through that list with people and they say no to one of these, or they're not sure? Then that kind of gives you the roadmap for what you need to work on next, right?
Yeah, it does. And so, we're doing surveys. It's kind of cool. It's sort of a simplified version of the Gallup 12 questions of employee engagement survey. I'm calling it culture and engagement survey, basically, Ralph. And, so you can come into the whole organization and go, we're weak in this component. We need to work on it. But the issue there is that they typically don't have a standard toolbox to turn to. These are the organizational things we're going to have installed and routinely repeat to make sure you can get to yes on the 7 questions. And so that's where EOS comes to bear, or it's EOS and Traction, or Holacracy, or 40X, or Rockefeller Habits, or Gazelles. These are all like operating systems. I call them organizational operating systems. And sometimes you need to install a system from the outside, but sometimes you can use the 7 questions as an audit tool to map your current tools to the 7 questions and realize, we already have it set up. We just need to map them. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it does. So this is like a diagnostic tool. You're going to hook them up. This will give you the vital signs. And then if you see that, the biggest breakdown here across the board is, I use the measurement example when I think I'm being measured based on one set of criteria, and management thinks I'm being measured on a different set of criteria, and my compensation is tied to the wrong measure, at least what I thought I was being measured on, then that diagnosis then informs the tool that we need to bring in, but the process, or what do we need to do to shore this particular area up and really nail this down so that everyone can say yes to this.
Right, exactly. And so by doing the surveys, we can start off, and some companies come straight in and do like an EOS implementation. Others are coming in and realizing they're just weak in one of the components, and we say, well, here's some tools from some different systems. I'm operating system agnostic. I don't care which system it is, as long as you can use it consistently to help each individual align with, and it's where you can say, hey, this is something we're doing for everyone, not to them. I'm fine with whatever system it is, Ralph.
Yeah. Well, one eye-opening thing about our conversation so far, and there's many eye-opening things, but just the awareness that you have brought that there are so many different tools out there, so many different templates and frameworks. Once we use yours to diagnose where we need work in, there's lots of resources available that we can then tap into, and we don't have to figure this out by ourselves.
Tons, hundreds, thousands. But we just need to start saying, guys, we're doing this for you, not to you. We're going to constantly be tying whatever we bring into the organization, whatever new tool, flavor of the month, we're going to anchor it in these 7 promises.
Yeah, I think that's important because You get in some organizations where the management or the leadership goes on a retreat, they come back, and then they've got some newfangled thing that they want to test on everybody. And then the next quarter, it's a different thing. And the next quarter, it's a different thing. This really kind of holds leadership accountable as well to a certain framework, doesn't it?
Right. We would expect once it's going for the organization and an individual to say, well, why are we doing that? How does that help us strengthen the 7 promises?
Right.
Okay, does that help me believe more? Oh, I understand that's going to narrow our strategy and help us focus a bit more. Okay, I understand that. It just gives everybody a voice. Everybody wants a voice.
I love it. And that's it. And man, that really taps right into the depth of what makes people feel like they are important. If an organization, just on an interpersonal level, if we listen to people, that's a sign of respect. We listen. They know that their voice is important and that somebody is hearing them. If you can pull that off on an organizational level, a lot of times that will go a long way to alleviate some of these communication problems that people experience at work and really turn the whole culture around just with that simple thing.
Oh, absolutely. And if you say we as an organization listen, but you don't tell people what channel to tune into at what time and what frequency, right? I mean, you know what I mean? It's like organization is now listening, and it's really important. You don't want it to be like Big Brother, but people need to understand, really how they're being heard and when the organization is listening.
Well, and I love the fact that the organization is making a promise. They're making a commitment to certain things, and they communicate that commitment to people, and then people can hold them accountable as to whether or not they're fulfilling what they promised. And the old joke is like the new manager that comes in and says, "Okay, guys, I'm here, and my door's always open," and then he goes into his office and slams the door.
Yeah, exactly. You can't do that. And so when you get everybody aligned to these questions, it self-perpetuates, and that's where the momentum comes in. It's if you do it really, really well, the burden comes off of the owner leader, and really it goes into the organization, and the organization is the one helping others align or self-select out.
Well, I'm sold, but I'm just one person. If people are listening to this and this resonates with them, what is the best way for them to begin to engage with you to see about how they can explore this, apply it, and begin to implement it in their organization?
Well, it started out as, it still continues to be open source and trying to spread the message. The book is called The Patient Organization, like patience. And then 7q7p.com is the website, like the number 7q, the number 7p. And we run workshops every quarter, and where a lot of times we have CEOs come in, maybe with their lieutenants, and get them on the same page of really what it really means to get to yes in the 7 questions, and a full understanding of what it's going to take to be able to make and keep the promise. That's through the workshop series. Run those in Chapel Hill, or just reach out, go online and find me and reach out. We want to spread the word, make the world a better place.
Amen to that. So the website is 7q7p.com. This has really been encouraging that all is not lost in the corporate world, that we can turn things around if we have the right tools and the right framework. And I think you have definitely, you've given me hope, and I think that you've given encouragement to our listeners as well. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom that you'd like to leave us with as we close?
You can even use the question framework to talk to your children about work. If they're miserable, you can ask them the 7 questions, and they'll get to the bottom of it pretty quickly. Or if you're thinking about changing jobs, you can say, where are you going? Is this going to, do you know that you're aligned to these 7 things? Do you know that you belong and believe what you're accountable for? Measured, heard, developed, and balanced.
I just think that is so, it's psychologically fulfilling just to sit here and meditate on the possibilities of being part of an organization, a business, a cause, a movement, even a marriage, right? I mean, any interpersonal relationship, any of your dealings with people, anything that has to do with communication, These are 7 very powerful questions. And so I appreciate you so much, Mr. Walt Brown, for being on Rebelpreneur Radio today. He is a seasoned multi-company entrepreneur, and he is 7 for 7 when it comes to launching and growing new companies. But over the last 10 years, he has been in the transformation business, transforming the culture of more than 150 organizations across the country. You can find out more at 7q7p.com. And again, Walt Brown, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on Rebelpreneur Radio today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Ralph.
You've been listening to Rebelpreneur Radio with Ralph Brogdon. Download the show notes and much more at rebelpreneur.com.